I built a business with my husband. And if everyone has ever heard the saying, do not mix business with family, we completely ignore that. And if you've been married before or have run a business, you know that those two things can run out on your patience. But I will not be here to provide you with any marriage counseling advice, but just to walk you through my entrepreneurial journey. Because for us at Lupiya, it started with just $500, a husband and wife team, and finally, with this big, bold dream to ensure that we would be able to create a Pan-African bank for small businesses. And so we did that, going into a community group, very excited to be creating Lupiya's first loan portfolio. We had our first 50 customers, and we walked through the whole month waiting for those repayments to happen. 30 days later, only 40% of that demographic of women was able to pay us back the loan. Lupiya's first failure, and now my co-founder and I, who's my husband, wondering whether we were in the right business. We had just come out of a failed business. We couldn't get a loan from a bank. We didn't have collateral. So the very peripherals that the banks were using to, one, assess affordability to pay, two, to assess the use of funds and why people get the money, became very apparent to us in that moment that we need to have been validating our customers that way. And so looking at the women, they had completely used those funds for their own personal use. And so we collected that 40% collection, went into another community group with more insights and with the fact that we're going to use different parameters. We ensured that there was a group guarantee model scheme that we're going to leverage. And then finally making sure that the women in that particular group understood that that use of funds was supposed to go for the intended purpose. So we purchased the items for them directly from their suppliers. Fast forward, this momentum was enough to really convince our family and friends to give us $50,000 and invest it into our business. 3 months down the line, we were coming out better post that failure that we had with the community groups that we're investing in. We get the $50,000 in, and it becomes very clear and apparent to at least me that we need to focus on customers and revenue because we were now having to get Lupiya to build the traction to start fundraising. My co-founder, on the other hand, is a tech genius, had already built software startups already, and so in his mind, we had to build the tech to actually build the credit scoring tools that we needed to actually serve these demographics. But I won't go into the husband and wife battle, back into the entrepreneurial journey. We consistently start raising funding, and for 4 years was a journey of rejection, everyone telling us how financial inclusion was charity, but internalizing all the feedback that we were being given to structure Lupiya and set it into a market player that was going to have a lot of dominance, was going to be able to build and justify why we were really focused on this small market. So we did that with our operations, really positioning Lupiya into this female-founded organization that was ready to position to support women financing. Luckily, 4 years later, that big break came. We had an investor come in at the height of COVID, investing $1 million in Lupiya. Now, before that had actually just happened to us, they were almost pulling out of the journey because COVID had just broken out and no one knew where COVID was going to take us. In that weekend of receiving that news, my co-founder went back, reset what we had built at Lupiya to completely build Lupiya into an online digital platform. The following week, we had unprecedented traction. While we would always underwrite up to 5, 10, 15 loans a day, for the first time, we were able to underwrite 500 loans. We rejected half of them because naturally we didn't have the money. But that was enough traction to convince our investors at the time that Lupiya was set and poised with the right traction to actually go out with that vision for a Pan-African strategy. And we did that. We convinced them to come in, and that traction was enough to continue building Lupiya now into profitability. which is where we were now focused on, and something I knew how to do very well: create revenue, bring in customers. We got Lupiya to profitability, and that traction was enough to actually bring us to a point where we were able to now scale Lupiya into a Series A company, and we're positioning to fundraise even more funding. We had now raised over $10 million, $11 million into Lupiya to scale into our Pan-African strategy to expand Lupiya into East and Southern Africa. We expanded to Tanzania, and we still have a goal of expanding to Rwanda, Botswana, and Namibia in the next 18 months. But this is just a validation that we needed. And throughout this journey, from the failures, the rejections, to now leveraging every opportunity that we had, so much that we even convinced the inaugural Google Black Founders Fund to make sure that we joined that cohort because Zambia wasn't part of the countries that they were recognizing. So I look back and think about the journey now and realize that these successes is really just a defining story of how we get here as a business. We started with all these struggles. We started with all these struggles and realized very quickly that if we didn't position ourselves with the right strategy, the right defining moments to really get us through to the traction that we needed, we really were not going to get ahead of this entrepreneurial journey. And so one of the biggest key lessons that I take away every time looking at my journey at Lupiya was really about one of resilience, defining our strategy, and really being consistent with our execution. And we did just that at Lupiya. And today, we are now looking at expanding to Rwanda, looking at a Pan-African strategy, and excited about scaling finance to women. Thank you so much for your time.